Joining us now, member of the House Homeland Security and Veterans Affairs Committee's Democratic Congressman Max Rose of New York. He's also a veteran of the war in Afghanistan and was awarded a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart.
Max, we already love you. Really want you to run for president, but you can't.
Did you hear how quiet it was where the president was speaking last night with two military vehicles behind him?
Nobody applauded.
It didn't seem like a rally.
Max, you can't run for president, can you?
I'm 32 years old. Otherwise, man, I'd jump right in. It's the cool thing to do right now.
It is. All the cool kids.
It'd be good.
All the kids are doing it.
No, there's no doubt about it.
Who cares about infrastructure bills? Let's just run for president.
So listen, you did something this week I didn't really understand. So maybe you can. I don't understand much. I'm a simple man. I'm a dumb country lawyer. But you apologize to the town. It's just who I am. Yeah, just shattered. No,
all right, what did he apologize for?
Yeah, what did you? So you apologized to the town?
Yeah, look,
for something you didn't even. Why?
Let's take a step back. I think one of the reasons why I ran for office is because we have to change politics in this country. Everybody is blaming each other, constant vitriol, constant political warfare, constant deflection. During the shutdown, I stood up, I said, this is my fault. Okay? Certainly I think that a big part of this lays at the president's feet, but I take responsibility for it, and I didn't take a cent of salary during the shutdown. I donated it all to charity. Congressman Ilhan Omar's comments really caused people pain. In my community and Jewish communities throughout the country, there's no doubt. And she apologized for them, and we are working as hard as we can to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore. But I did think it was important for me to stand up in front of a Jewish community on Staten Island and say, look, I failed you. Congress caused you pain, caused you hurt, and we're going to work as hard as we can to make sure this doesn't happen again. It's not just Jewish communities that are feeling pain. We see Muslim communities throughout the country feeling incredible amounts of pain.
But you did apologize. I mean, you apologized, but you were one of the first people, if not the first person, to go out criticizing her remarks. And I had to say, Nancy Pelosi and the House Democrats, the leadership, came together in a very strong way. Well, you got the guy running the Republican Party right now in the House of Representatives who was spitting out anti-Semitic tweets during the campaign.
Absolutely, and you didn't see any member of the Republican Party take responsibility for that or criticize for that. And that's what my issue is with them. We don't see any leadership. None.
Donald Trump, by the way, puts a stack of $100 bills and stamps the Star of David on Hillary Clinton's face.
You see pictures of Janet Yellen, looming over it. This is the issue, though, also with the media, okay? The coverage of this on the Democratic side has been incredibly disproportionate. When Minority Leader McCarthy made these comments last year, when he tweeted out about Jews pulling the strings, we didn't see members of the press camped outside of his office. So it's undoubtedly that the press is acting as if they're agents of the Republican Party right now. That's a part of life. But just one more point here. The Republican Party is focusing on this as much as they can because they have zero ideas, zero plans for how they can pursue a better America.
From Representative Omar continues making
you're the pundit. That's for you to decide.
No, I'm not a pundit. I'm just a working
You're a pundit.
I'm a dumb country lawyer. But AOC, didn't AOC come out and say that anybody calling her remarks anti-Semitic were way off?
Look, I'm not an avid follower of AOC's tweets. Yeah. But what I will tell you is that those comments caused hurt. And
they were anti-Semitic.
And I'm a member of Congress. I said that they were anti-Semitic in nature. I didn't call her an anti-Semite. I said that they were anti-Semitic in nature. And I stood up and I took responsibility for them and I apologized for them because they came out of Congress. This shouldn't be news that someone did this. This should be run-of-the-mill stuff, okay?
And it's really responsible of you to do that, and I appreciate that.
Thanks.
This was
You're always there.
Ilhan, you and I. We're tight. This is the third anti-Semitic row in as many months. There was an effort on the part of the Democratic caucus to condemn it, to say these are anti-Semitic remarks, we're going to condemn them, isolate them individually. That effort was killed internally by the Democratic caucus. It became an all hate matters resolution, in essentially saying that everything matters, so this is sort of a dilution of that resolution. Who killed that resolution?
Talk about a biased question.
It is a biased question.
When Congresswoman Omar made those comments that same day or the day prior, there was a very, very public threat made against her life. There's an incredible rise of Islamophobia in this country. I represent one of the largest Muslim communities in America. So,
do you really? On Staten Island?
No, and in South Brooklyn.
And South Brooklyn, okay.
So, if you don't think that that was an opportune moment for us to stand up and say, certainly we object to acts of anti-Semitism, but certainly we also object to acts of Islamophobia, then we can chew gum and walk at the same time. And that was the right thing to do. Absolutely.
So you think it was appropriate for the Democratic caucus to withdraw its original resolution?
No. Look. You must talk to more Democrats than I talked to about this backroom stuff, withdrawing this, withdrawing that. What I saw was a resolution that pronounced an objection and opposition to acts of hate as they rise across the country, particularly anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, things that really hit my district hard. Yesterday I went back to the base, Fort Hamilton base, where I took the oath of office to join the military 9 years ago. And I swore in 10 new soldiers. Honestly, one of the proudest moments of my life.
Great.
And when you look at these 10 soldiers, and you guys would have loved this. They came from all over, first generation. Beautiful cultural mosaic right in that room that represents not only America, but the future of America. And we have to protect that. We have to honor that. Okay, and that's what we're going to keep on doing.
Willie.
So I want to ask you about, we came in playing that clip of the president talking about John McCain yesterday, a war hero like yourself. John McCain was. Just your impressions of what the president's been doing over the last week or so.
First of all, I'm nowhere near a war hero.
Well,
I had the opportunity to work with heroes. I had the opportunity to lead heroes in combat, but I'm nowhere near a hero. But
I'll say it for you.
With that being said, though, there's a new breed of politics that has emerged. The President of the United States wakes up in the morning, he figures out what he can tweet that will be disruptive and that will dominate your time. We've got certain members of the Democratic Party who seriously do try to do the same. I am not going to bite. Okay, there's 3 things that are guaranteed in this world: death, taxes, and Donald Trump will say some crazy stuff. I'm not going to honor those comments with an ounce of my attention or any further words.
Let me ask you, what do people care about the most in Staten Island right now?
Traffic, opioid epidemic, and building a seawall on the east shore of Staten Island so we can actually protect ourselves against the next superstorm. These are the bread and butter issues that people wake up and they actually care about. It's also the bread and butter issues that politicians have been ignoring.
How's the economy on Staten Island?
The economy is doing well right now, certainly. I think that people are employed. But what we are seeing, though, is a massive affordability crisis. Their wages have stagnated. Property taxes are going up. People on Staten Island pay higher property taxes than the mayor of the city of New York, despite the fact that his home is worth often double what theirs is because of an incredibly unjust, unequal property tax system. We have the highest rate of unionization of any district in the country, and they're seeing a constant war against unions being conducted. We got to put government back on the side of these working folks who have been ignored or ripped off for far too long.
And talk to visitors right now. People that come to Manhattan, never get on the ferry, never go over to Staten Island. Why should they do that? Where should they go when they get off that ferry?
So look, they get on the ferry to take that free ride. But when they get off the ferry, man, I want them to take a trip down Forest Avenue, see some of the best bars, the best restaurants in New York City, particularly my guy Jody's, best Irish pub in America.
Okay, I'm writing that down.
I'll be there tonight. They can come hang out.
Okay, Willie.
So Jody's, we're going to do a show.
Jody's.
Absolutely.
Let's do that.
Go to a ball game right there on the water. Right?
Unbelievable.
I love it. All right, Congressman Max Rose, great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Max.
It's always good to be back here. Thanks.
Come back.
Still ahead, investigations are ramping up into the grounded Boeing 737 MAX jetliners. Even the FBI is getting involved. NBC's Tom Costello joins us with the very latest next on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.